Listen to that sound. Clink. It is the sound of celebration. Weddings, birthdays, New Year's Eve. We raise our glasses, we hit them together, and we take a drink. But have you ever stopped to ask why? Why do we feel the need to smash two fragile objects together before we consume a liquid? It seems like a meaningless social habit. But like the handshake, the origin of this ritual is buried in paranoia, murder, and fear. For most of human history, inviting someone to dinner was a dangerous game, and accepting a drink from them was even riskier. In the royal courts of Rome, in the banquet halls of the Middle Ages, and in the palaces of the Borgias, a cup of wine was the perfect delivery system for assassination. That clink you hear at a party today isn't just a happy noise. It is the echo of an ancient security protocol. You are about to learn why cheers was originally a matter of life and death. To understand the clink, we have to understand the weapon: poison, arsenic, hemlock, cyanide. For centuries, these were the poor man's atomic bomb. They were silent, invisible, and often tasteless when mixed with strong wine. Assassination by sword was messy and public. Assassination by poison was elegant and deniable. So, how do you survive a dinner party in a world full of enemies? Legend says that the clinking of glasses began as a practical safety measure. The theory goes like this: when two people raised their mugs, often made of metal, wood, or thick glass, they wouldn't just gently tap them. They would slam them together hard. The goal was to make the liquids splash. You wanted a bit of your wine to spill into my cup and a bit of my wine to spill into yours. It was a mixture of fluids, a mutual assurance. If I poisoned your cup and we clinked hard enough, I would end up poisoning myself. If a host refused to clink or refused to drink from the mixed supply, swords would be drawn immediately. While historians debate how widespread this splashing practice actually was, the psychological impact is undeniable. The ritual established a bond. We share this drink, so we share this fate. But there is a second, darker layer to this ritual, one that goes beyond physical poison and enters the realm of the supernatural. In the medieval period, people were terrified of evil spirits and demons. They believed that demons were constantly looking for a way to enter the human body to possess it. And when were you most vulnerable? When you opened your mouth to eat or drink. Opening your mouth was seen as opening the door to your soul. Furthermore, alcohol was believed to lower your spiritual defenses, which is why hard liquor is still called spirits today. So how do you protect your soul while drinking? You use noise. In medieval folklore, it was believed that the sound of bells drove away evil spirits. Church bells rang to clear the air of demons. The clink of the glasses was a miniature church bell. By making a loud, sharp noise right before drinking, you were scaring away the invisible demons hovering around your mouth. You were purifying the air so the alcohol could enter safely without an evil stowaway. So the clink protected your body from poison and your soul from possession. There is one final rule of the cheers ritual that survives to this day, especially in Europe. Look me in the eye. In Germany, France, and many other cultures, if you clink glasses without making direct eye contact, it is considered incredibly rude. Why is eye contact so crucial? Let's go back to the poison theory. If I hand you a poisoned drink, I am going to be nervous. I will be watching your hands. I will be watching the glass to see if you actually drink it. I will be looking for sediment at the bottom of the cup. I won't be looking at your eyes. By forcing eye contact, we are demanding a trust check. When you lock eyes with someone, you are distracting them from the weapon, the glass. Only a person with a clear conscience can maintain steady eye contact while drinking a potential death sentence. It is the ultimate psychological test. Also, let's look at the word itself. Toast. Why do we make a toast? This comes from the 16th and 17th centuries. Back then, wine wasn't always great quality. It could be acidic or rancid. To make it taste better, people would literally drop a piece of spiced burnt toast bread into the bottom of the wine jug. The charcoal in the bread would absorb the acidity and improve the flavor. Over time, the person being honored became the toast, the thing that made the party better, just like the bread made the wine better. Today, we don't worry much about arsenic in our wine. We don't worry about demons entering our mouths with our beer, but the ritual remains. We stand up, we make noise, we look each other in the eye, and we drink. It is remarkable how sticky these behaviors are. We are modern humans with smartphones and space travel. But when we celebrate, we revert to medieval survival tactics. The clink is a reminder of a time when trust was a luxury, and every friend could be a hidden enemy. So the next time you are at a party and someone raises a glass and says, "Cheers, Prost, Salud, or Skull," pay attention. Listen to the sound of the glass. Look them in the eye. You aren't just wishing them good health. You are signing an ancient peace treaty. You are proving that, for tonight at least, you are not trying to kill them. Cheers. Imagine you are in a crowded library or a silent movie theater. Someone coughs. Nobody says anything. Someone hiccups. Nobody cares. Someone burps. People might look away in disgust. But if someone sneezes, instantly, total strangers will turn around and say, "Bless you." Or in German, Gesundheit, or in Turkish, Çok yaşa. Why? Why is this specific bodily function the only one that requires a divine intervention? Why do we feel the need to invoke God every time air explodes from someone's nose? We think it's just politeness. We think it's good manners. But the truth is much more terrifying. For thousands of years, a sneeze wasn't just a noise. It was a warning shot. It was a signal that your soul was in danger, or that a deadly pandemic had just marked you for death. When you say "bless you," you aren't being polite. You are performing an ancient exorcism. To understand the fear of the sneeze, we have to look at how our ancestors viewed the human body. In ancient Greece and Rome, and in many pagan cultures, the breath was not just air. It was life itself. The Latin word for spirit is spiritus, which literally means breath. So your soul lived in your breath. People believed that a sneeze was a moment of extreme vulnerability. It was a violent explosion that forced the breath out of the body at 100 miles per hour. The superstition was simple, but frightening. If you sneezed too hard, you might accidentally eject your soul from your body. And once your soul was outside, floating in the air, you were vulnerable. Evil spirits, lurking invisibly around you, could snatch your soul before it could return to your body. Or worse, a demon could use the opportunity to enter your empty body through the open nose. So the phrase, "God bless you," was originally a protective shield. It was a verbal command to stop the devil from stealing a soul. In some ancient cultures, they would even clap their hands loudly while sneezing to scare away the spirits waiting to invade. But the most famous origin story of "bless you" comes from one of the darkest periods in human history. The year is 590 AD. Rome is being ravaged by a plague. Before the Black Death of the Middle Ages, there was the plague of Justinian. It was brutal. People were dying by the thousands every day. Pope Gregory the Great assumed the papacy in this time of chaos. One of the key symptoms of this specific plague was a sudden, violent act of sneezing. If you sneezed, it meant you were likely already infected. It meant you had days, maybe hours, to live. It was the call of death. Pope Gregory issued a papal decree. He commanded that any time a Christian heard someone sneeze, they must immediately pray for them to save them from certain death. They were ordered to say, "God bless you." It wasn't a wish for the future. It was a desperate final prayer for a dying man. So every time you say it today, you are echoing a panic from a time when a simple sneeze meant the end of your life. There is also a biological legend that kept this tradition alive through the centuries. For a long time, people believed that when you sneeze, your heart stops beating. It sounds dramatic, right? Physiologically, it's not exactly true. Your heart doesn't stop, but the rhythm can change. When you sneeze, the pressure in your chest increases massively. This stimulates the vagus nerve. Your heart rate might momentarily slow down to compensate for the pressure change. To an ancient person, feeling their chest tighten and their pulse skip a beat, it felt like a mini-death. A sneeze was a moment where life paused. In many cultures, the response reflects this fear of death. In Turkish, çok yaşa means live long. In Spanish, salud means health. In German, Gesundheit means health. Notice a pattern? None of these are about manners. All of them are desperate wishes for survival. We are begging the universe to keep this person alive. Interestingly, this superstition goes the other way in East Asia. In Japan and Korea, if you sneeze for no reason, nobody says bless you. Instead, the superstition is that someone, somewhere, is talking about you behind your back. One sneeze means they are saying something good. 2 sneezes means they are saying something bad. 3 sneezes? You're just sick. Today, we know that a sneeze is usually just dust, pollen, or a cold virus. We know our soul isn't going to fly out of our nose. We know the devil isn't waiting to jump in, but we still say it. If someone sneezes and the room stays silent, it feels wrong. It feels awkward. Why? Because rituals are stronger than facts. We are creatures of habit, and we are creatures of history. Deep down, we are still those terrified people in 590 AD, afraid of the invisible death floating in the air. We are still trying to protect each other with magic words. So the next time you hear that explosion and you automatically say, bless you, remember, you aren't just being polite. You are fighting the plague, you are protecting a soul, and you are keeping a 1,500-year-old survival instinct alive. You've done this your entire life, and you don't know why it works. Have you ever stopped to think about why you feel relieved when you do this? We have all done it. You are talking to a friend. You say something confident. I've never been in a car accident. I haven't been sick all year. My project is going perfectly. And then, instantly, a wave of panic hits you. You feel like you just made a terrible mistake. You feel like you have tempted fate. So, what do? You frantically look around for a table, a chair, a door frame, anything made of wood, and you knock, once, twice, 3 times. Knock on wood. Only then do you relax. You feel safe again. But why? Why does tapping your knuckles against a dead piece of a tree give you a sense of security? How can a piece of furniture protect you from a car accident or a flu virus? Most people think it's just a silly superstition. But the truth is, this ritual is one of the oldest in human history. It predates Christianity, it predates Rome, and it goes back to a time when we believed the forest was watching us. You aren't just knocking on a table. You are knocking on a God's front door. To understand this ritual, we have to travel back to the ancient forests of Europe, specifically to the Celts and the Druids. For these ancient people, the world was alive. They didn't see trees as just biology or lumber. They saw them as the homes of the gods. The spirits, dryads, and fairies lived inside the bark of the trees, especially the oak tree, which was sacred to the thunder god Thor and the sky god Zeus. The theory goes that knocking on wood had 2 distinct purposes for the pagans. The first was a wake-up call. If you were in trouble or if you needed protection, you would touch or knock on the tree to wake up the spirit inside. You were literally knocking on the spirit's door to say, "Hey, I need help. Listen to me." The second purpose was gratitude. If something good happened to you, like surviving a battle or having a good harvest, you would knock on the tree as a way of saying thank you to the spirit that provided it. So originally, this wasn't about fear. It was about connection. It was a physical conversation with the divine forces of nature. But there is a darker theory that explains why we do it specifically when we are bragging. In folklore across the world, there is a belief in the evil eye, or jealous spirits. The idea is that the universe listens, and the universe hates arrogance. If you say, "I have the perfect life," the evil spirits lurking nearby will hear you. They will get jealous, and they will try to ruin your luck just to teach you a lesson. This is where the knocking comes in as a tactic. Some anthropologists believe that ancient people knocked on wood to create noise. The loud sound of knuckles on hard wood was meant to drown out your voice. So, you would whisper your wish, or your boast, and then immediately make a loud noise so the evil spirits couldn't hear what you said. It was a form of audio camouflage. You were effectively censoring yourself to prevent the demons from hearing your good news and stealing it from you. So when you say, "I've never broken a bone," and then knock, you are basically trying to delete that sentence from the cosmic record. As with many pagan rituals, when Christianity took over Europe, it didn't ban the practice. It rebranded it. The spirits in the trees became incompatible with the church. So, the meaning shifted. In the Middle Ages, knocking on wood became associated with the wood of the cross. Relics of the true cross were incredibly popular in medieval Europe. Churches claimed to have pieces of the actual wood on which Jesus was crucified. Pilgrims would travel hundreds of miles just to touch these pieces of wood. The belief was that touching the holy wood gave you immediate sanctuary and divine protection. In this context, knocking on wood was a way of invoking the power of Jesus. It was a physical prayer. Interestingly, we see this survival instinct in other cultures too. In the Jewish tradition, during the Spanish Inquisition, synagogues were built of wood and had secret knocks. Some historians suggest that knocking a specific code on the wooden doors was a way to identify friends from enemies, a literal survival mechanism that got embedded in the culture as a symbol of safety. Today, we aren't usually waking up tree spirits. We aren't usually praying to relics. But the ritual is stronger than ever. Why? Psychologists call it anti-jinxing. The human brain hates uncertainty. We hate the idea that a car accident or an illness could happen completely at random, regardless of how good we are. It makes us feel helpless. Knocking on wood gives us a tiny physical moment of control. It is a motor action that reduces anxiety. By performing a physical action, your brain feels like it has done something to prevent the bad event. It turns passive worry into active protection. It is a placebo, but a powerful one. So the next time you catch yourself knocking on a table after saying something risky, don't feel silly. You are participating in a ritual that has survived for thousands of years. You are waking the druid spirits. You are distracting the jealous demons. You are touching the Holy Cross. And you are soothing your anxious modern brain. All with a simple tap of your knuckles. Knock on wood. Time is not real. Nature has no calendar. The universe doesn't know it is 2026. January 1st is an arbitrary line drawn in the sand by a dead dictator to collect taxes. Here is the story of how Julius Caesar, a two-faced god and a pope, invented the new year to control your mind. To understand why we celebrate on January 1st, we first have to imagine a world without a fixed calendar. It is difficult for a modern brain to comprehend, but for most of human history, what day is it was a question with no clear answer. In the early Roman Republic, the calendar was a disaster. It was based on the cycles of the moon, not the sun. The lunar year is only 355 days long. The solar year, the time it takes for the Earth to orbit the sun, is 365 days. This 10-day difference seems small, but over a few decades it creates chaos. Seasons began to drift. Farmers would look at the calendar and it would say January, but outside it was harvest time. The harvest festivals would happen before the crops were even planted. But the chaos wasn't just incompetence, it was corruption. In Rome, The calendar was controlled by the high priests, known as the pontifices. These priests were also politicians, and they discovered a powerful weapon. They could edit time. If a politician they liked was in power, the priests would add an extra month to the year to keep him in office longer. If an enemy was in power, they would shorten the year to kick him out faster. They literally stole time from the people to rig elections. By the time Julius Caesar came to power in 46 BC, the Roman calendar was 3 months out of sync with the sun. Rome was the most powerful empire on earth, but it didn't know what time it was. Enter Julius Caesar. Caesar was a dictator, but he was also a man of order. He hated the mess the priests had made, but he needed a scientist. During his time in Egypt, while he was having his famous affair with Queen Cleopatra, he met a man named Sosigenes of Alexandria. Sosigenes was an astronomer. He told Caesar something revolutionary. Forget the moon, follow the sun. He explained that the year was exactly 365.25 days long. Caesar took this knowledge back to Rome and decided to perform the greatest hard reset in human history. He created the Julian calendar, but to fix the damage caused by the corrupt priests, he had to realign the months with the seasons. So, in the year 46 BC, Caesar added extra days, a lot of them. He added 2 extra months between November and December. He added another month after February. The result was a nightmare. The year 46 BC is known by historians as the Year of Confusion. It lasted for 445 days. Imagine living through that. It was the longest year in human history. People were confused about when to pay rent. Contracts were broken. No one knew when to celebrate holidays. But when the sun finally set on the 445th day, the clock was reset. And Caesar made a decision that dictates your life today. Before this, the Roman year started in March, the time of war and spring. Caesar moved the start of the year to January 1st. Why? Because of a god. The name January comes from the Roman god Janus. In Roman mythology, Janus is a very specific and strange deity. He is the god of doors, gates, beginnings, and endings. But his most defining feature is his face. He has 2 of them. One face looks backward, into the past. The other face looks forward, into the future. Caesar realized that this was the perfect metaphor for the new year. January 1st is the doorway. It is the moment we stand on the threshold, looking back at what we did last year and looking forward to what we will do next. It was a poetic choice, but it was also political. In Rome, the consuls, the highest elected officials, began their term on January 1st. By aligning the calendar with the political term, Caesar ensured that the administrative machine of the empire was synchronized. But old habits die hard. After Rome fell, Europe fell into chaos again. During the Middle Ages, the Church hated the idea of celebrating a pagan god like Janus. So for almost 1,000 years, Europe couldn't agree on when the year started. If you were in England, the New Year started on March 25th, Lady Day. If you were in Italy, it might be December 25th, Christmas. If you were in France, it might be Easter Sunday. It was a logistical nightmare. You could travel from London to Paris and literally travel back in time to a different year. By the 16th century, another problem appeared. Caesar's math was good, but it wasn't perfect. He calculated the year as 365.25 days. The actual solar year is 365.24219 days. That tiny difference, 11 minutes a year, doesn't seem like much, but over 1,600 years, those 11 minutes added up to 10 full days. The calendar was drifting again. Easter, which is supposed to be in the spring, was drifting toward the summer. Enter Pope Gregory XIII. In 1582, he unveiled the Gregorian calendar, the one we use today. He decided to cut the 10 extra days to realign the world. He issued a papal bull. Thursday, October 4th, 1582, was followed immediately by Friday, October 15th, 1582. 10 days were simply deleted from history. they never happened. This caused panic. In Protestant countries, people thought this was a Catholic plot. There were riots in the streets of England and Germany. Peasants believed that by cutting 10 days off the calendar, the Pope was actually shortening their lives by 10 days. They thought they would die sooner. Landlords demanded a full month's rent for a short month, causing economic fury. It took nearly 300 years for the whole world to agree to use this calendar. Russia didn't switch until 1918. Turkey switched in 1926. So the date January 1st is not a natural fact. It is a hard-won diplomatic agreement that took centuries of blood and riots to establish. So why do we care? Why do we still attach so much meaning to this arbitrary date? Psychologists at the Wharton School call this the fresh start effect. Human beings struggle with the continuity of time. If you see your life as one long, unbroken stream from birth to death, it becomes overwhelming. Mistakes you made 10 years ago feel like they are still weighing you down today. We need temporal landmarks. We need mental borders to separate our current self from our past self. January 1st allows you to dissociate. You can look at the lazy, unhealthy person you were in December and say, "That wasn't me. That was old me. The new me starts tomorrow." It is a cognitive trick, a collective hallucination. We agree to pretend that the slate is wiped clean. Dopamine levels spike on New Year's Eve because of the anticipation of this rebirth. It is the only holiday that celebrates something that hasn't happened yet. It is a celebration of potential. As you watch the fireworks this year, and as you watch the clock tick from 23:59 to 0000, remember this: nothing in the universe has changed. The Earth is in the same spot in its orbit. The stars haven't moved. The only thing that has changed is a number in our collective imagination. But that doesn't make it fake. It makes it human. We invented January 1st because we needed it. We needed a Janus-faced God to let us forgive our past and fearlessly look into our future. We needed a finish line so we could convince ourselves to start running again. So, Happy New Year. It's an illusion, but it's the most important illusion we have. Look at your ring finger. If you are married, there is a band of metal wrapped around it. You think it symbolizes eternal love, but for most of human history, it symbolized something else entirely: ownership. This is the story of how a Roman slave chain evolved into a billion-dollar diamond industry. To find the true origin of the ring, we have to strip away the romance and look at survival. Anthropologists have a theory about the very first wedding bands, and it is disturbing. In prehistoric times, life was brutal. Women were vital for the survival of the tribe. They were the creators of life. But resources were scarce. Rival tribes would raid each other to steal food, weapons, and women. Some historians suggest that the earliest form of a wedding ring wasn't a piece of jewelry. It was a rope. Legends from ancient folklore suggest that when a man captured a mate, he would tie cords made of braided grass or reeds around her ankles and wrists. This served two purposes. First, it physically prevented her from running away until she accepted her new life. Second, it was a visual tag. It signaled to other men, "This one is taken. If you touch her, you die." Over time, as the woman settled in, the ropes on the ankles were removed. The ropes on the wrists were removed. Eventually, only a small symbolic rope remained around the finger. It was a leash that had shrunk, but the meaning remained the same. You belong to me. The circle didn't represent eternity. It represented a bond that could not be broken. If the caveman theory is speculative, the Roman history is documented fact, and it is cold, hard, and legal. In ancient Rome, marriage wasn't primarily about love. It was a business transaction between two families. The groom handed over money to the bride's father. In exchange, the father handed over the bride. This was called coemptio, purchase. The ring played a crucial legal role in this sale. In Roman law, when you made a down payment on a contract, it was called arha. The ring was the arha. It was the deposit. By accepting the ring, the woman was legally acknowledging that she was no longer free. She was now the property of her husband. And here is the dark detail. The first Roman wedding rings were not made of gold. They were made of iron. Why iron? Because iron is the metal of strength, but it is also the metal of chains, cages, and weapons. Pliny the Elder, the famous Roman historian, wrote that most women wore a simple iron hoop. It symbolized the iron durability of the marriage contract. A woman would wear this iron ring inside the house to show her submission. However, Rome was also a society of image. When she went out in public, she might swap the iron ring for a gold one to show off her husband's wealth. But the moment she returned home, the gold came off and the iron went back on. The message was clear. In public, you are my trophy. In private, you are my possession. So, if the history is so dark and transactional, why do we still do it? Why didn't we abandon this symbol of slavery? Because of a beautiful lie. Sometime during the Greek and Egyptian eras, a myth emerged that saved the wedding ring from extinction. Ancient anatomists were dissecting bodies, trying to understand how the human machine worked. They made a mistake that changed history. They believed they found a specific nerve or vein that ran directly from the fourth finger of the left hand, straight to the heart. They called it the vena amoris, the vein of love. They believed that no other finger had this direct connection. If you put a ring on the thumb or index finger, it was just jewelry. But if you wrapped gold around the fourth finger, you were physically stimulating the heart. You were binding the emotions. This gave the ring of ownership a new PR campaign. Suddenly, it wasn't about a contract anymore. It was about biology. Early Christians loved this idea, but they added their own ritualistic twist to it. In medieval Christian weddings, the priest wouldn't just slide the ring onto the finger. It was a sequence. He would touch the thumb. In the name of the Father, he would touch the index finger. And of the Son, he would touch the middle finger. And of the Holy Ghost. And finally, he would slide the ring onto the fourth finger. Amen. The fourth finger became the holy resting place. So, a combination of bad anatomy and religious ritual cemented the ring on that specific finger forever. During the Renaissance, the ownership aspect returned, but with a clever mechanical twist. Men were leaving for long wars or trade voyages. They were terrified that their wives would be unfaithful while they were gone. So, they invented the gimel ring, or the puzzle ring. These were masterpieces of engineering. The ring looked like a single band, but it was actually made of 2, 3, or even 4 interlocking hoops. When worn on the finger, they stayed together perfectly. But if the wife took the ring off, perhaps to hide her marriage status for a night of fun, the ring would fall apart into a jumbled mess of loops. Putting it back together was incredibly difficult. It required a specific trick or key. If the husband came home and found the ring was a tangled mess, or if the wife refused to take it off to show him, he knew she had removed it. It was a chastity alarm. In the Middle East and Turkey, these puzzle rings became very famous. They were complex status symbols, but their core function was surveillance. It was a way for a man to monitor his wife's finger even when he was 1,000 miles away. Now let's jump to the 20th century. You might think that a diamond ring is a tradition as old as time. It isn't. Until the 1930s, almost nobody gave diamond engagement rings. They were considered a waste of money. People gave simple gold bands or colored stones. But then, one company panicked, De Beers. They controlled the world's diamond mines, but sales were crashing due to the Great Depression. So, in 1938, they hired a New York ad agency called N.W. Ayer. The brief was simple. Create a situation where almost every person pledging marriage feels compelled to acquire a diamond engagement ring. They launched the most effective psychological operation in capitalist history. They paid Hollywood stars to wear diamonds in movies. They paid fashion designers to talk about diamonds on the radio. But the kill shot came in 1947. A copywriter named Francis Garrity came up with a slogan. 4 words that changed the world. A diamond is forever. It was a stroke of genius. It linked a useless rock to the concept of eternal love. The implication was subtle but toxic. If he buys you a cheap ring, his love is cheap. If the ring is eternal, the marriage will be eternal. They even invented the salary rule. De Beers ran ads literally telling men, spend 2 months' salary on the ring. They created an arbitrary tax on love. Before 1940, only 10% of brides received diamond rings. By 1990, it was 80%. We are not following an ancient tradition. We are following a marketing campaign from 1947. So, look at your hand again. The history of that metal band is heavy. It carries the weight of the caveman's rope. It carries the coldness of the Roman iron chain. It carries the anatomical lie of the vena amoris. And it carries the sparkle of a corporate marketing scheme. Does this mean you should take it off? Not necessarily, because symbols change. We have the power to redefine them. Today, when we exchange rings, we aren't buying property. We are making a promise. But it is good to know the truth. It reminds us that love shouldn't be a chain, and it shouldn't be a transaction. The ring is a circle. It has no beginning and no end. Just make sure that in your life it represents a cycle of love, not a cycle of control. It is the most famous song in the world. We dim the lights. We bring out a cake on fire. We force a child to spit on it while making a secret wish. It looks innocent. But historically, a birthday was considered the most dangerous day of your life, a time when demons were closest to stealing your soul. To understand why we put fire on food, we have to travel back to ancient Greece, specifically to the Temple of Artemis. Artemis was the goddess of the hunt, but more importantly, she was the goddess of the moon. The ancient Greeks wanted to offer her something that symbolized her power, so they baked cakes. But not just any cakes. They made them round to mimic the shape of the full moon. However, a cake sitting on an altar looks dead. The moon glows. The moon shines. So, to make the cake alive like the moon, they stuck lit candles into it. The flickering fire gave the cake a mystical glowing aura in the dark temple. But the candles served a second, more practical spiritual purpose. Prayer. The Greeks believed that the gods lived on Mount Olympus, high above the clouds. Human voices were too weak to reach them. But smoke? Smoke rises. Smoke ignores gravity. They believed that the smoke from a candle was a spiritual elevator. By blowing out the candle, you were releasing the prayer. You were sending a signal up to Artemis. If the smoke rose straight up, the goddess was listening. So, originally, the candles weren't about years of life. They were a communication device with the divine. But when Christianity took over Rome, this practice was banned. In fact, for the first few centuries of Christianity, celebrating a birthday was considered a sin. Why? Because only pagans celebrated birthdays. Christians celebrated death days, the day saints died and entered heaven. It took 1,000 years for the birthday cake to return, and when it did, it came back in the dark forests of Germany. Let's move to 18th century Germany. This is where the modern birthday party was invented, but it was called Kinderfest. And it wasn't a party in the way we think of it today. It was a protection ritual. In the 1700s, child mortality was terrifyingly high. Sickness, disease, and the cold claimed nearly half of all children before they reached adulthood. Because of this, a child's birthday wasn't just a milestone, it was a survival victory. But there was a superstition. German folklore believed that on the anniversary of your birth, the veil between the spirit world and the human world became thin. On your birthday, your soul was loose. This made children incredibly vulnerable to the evil eye, jealous spirits, and demons who wanted to steal their life force. So, the parents organized a Kinderfest not to spoil the child, but to surround them with a protective circle of adults. The cake was central to this protection. They placed candles on the cake, one for every year the child had survived. But, and this is the crucial part, they added one extra candle in the middle. It was called the Lebenslicht, the light of life. This candle represented the hope for another full year of life. Here is the strict rule of the Kinderfest. The candles were lit first thing in the morning, and they had to burn all day long. If a candle burned down, it was immediately replaced. If the flame went out, it was a terrible omen. It meant the child would die before their next birthday. The parents watched that fire like guards watching a gate. The fire was the child's soul. The cake was only eaten after dinner, once the day was safely over. So, the happy candles you see today originated as a desperate anxiety ritual by parents terrified of losing their children. Now, let's talk about the wish. Why do we tell children, "Don't tell anyone your wish, or it won't come true"? This sounds like a playground rule, but it is actually a remnant of ancient witchcraft belief. In the world of magic and spirits, names and words have power. If you speak your desire out loud, two things happen. First, the jinx, evil spirits, who are always listening, especially on your birthday, will hear what you want. Since they are malicious, they will do everything in their power to stop it from happening. Second, the power leak. By speaking it, you dissipate the energy. So, the wish must remain silent. It must be locked inside your mind. This brings us back to the smoke. When the child blows out the candles at the end of the Kinderfest, the massive cloud of smoke rises. Because the wish was silent, the smoke carries the encrypted message up to the heavens or to the ancestors. Only the higher powers can read the wish in the smoke. The demons on earth are left confused. It is a form of spiritual cryptography. And what about the one-breath rule? You must blow them all out in one breath. This is a test of vitality. Breath is life, spiritus. If the child has strong lungs and can extinguish the fire in one go, it proves they have a strong life force. They are strong enough to survive the coming year. If they leave candles burning, it suggests weakness, a gap in the armor. It implies that the light of life is struggling against the darkness. For a long time, this ritual was only for the rich. Why? Because ingredients were expensive. In the Middle Ages, sugar was a luxury spice imported from the East. It was worth its weight in gold. Ordinary peasants didn't have sweetened cakes. They had bread and candles. Beeswax candles were expensive. Tallow candles made from animal fat smelled like burning meat and were too gross to put on food. So, only the aristocracy could afford to burn clean, wax candles on a sugary cake. It wasn't until the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century that this changed. Factories started mass-producing cheap paraffin candles. Shipping lanes made sugar and cocoa affordable. Suddenly, the Kinderfest ritual trickled down to the working class, but as it spread, it lost its fear factor. The Lebenslicht, lifelight, became just one to grow on. The demons were replaced by clowns. The protective circle of adults was replaced by school friends. The survival ritual became a consumerist party. But the core actions, the fire, the silence, the smoke, remained exactly the same. We kept the mechanics of the magic, but forgot the meaning of the spell. There is one final grotesque irony to this tradition. Think about what you are actually doing. You have a delicious, sugary food item that everyone is about to eat, and you invite the birthday person, often a child, a super spreader of germs, to take a deep breath and forcefully exhale over the entire surface of the food. In any other context, this is disgusting. If you blew on a steak at a restaurant before serving it, people would be horrified. But on a birthday, we cheer for it. A study by Clemson University found that blowing out candles increases the bacteria on the frosting by 1,400%. You are literally coating the cake in a biofilm of saliva. During the Spanish flu of 1918, and more recently during the COVID-19 pandemic, health officials tried to kill this tradition. They suggested waving the candles out or using a separate blowing cupcake. But they failed. Just like the handshake, the ritual is too deep in our reptile brain. We don't care about the germs, we care about the magic. We need to extinguish the fire. We need to complete the cycle. The biological risk is ignored because the spiritual need is stronger. So, the next time you find yourself in a dark room, the door opens, the flickering light enters, the people around you start chanting that monotonous rhythmic song, "Happy birthday to you." Look at the scene with fresh eyes. You are witnessing a pagan temple ceremony. You are seeing the German parents of the 1700s, terrified that their child won't make it through the winter. You are watching a human being engage in a silent negotiation with the gods, using smoke as a messenger. We think we are modern, rational people with our smartphones and our science. But once a year, we turn off the electric lights. We light a fire, and we stare into the flame, hoping that the darkness won't take us. So, make a wish. But remember, don't tell anyone, because the spirits are still listening.